Alrighty, let's get after it today here on this Tuesday, the 22nd of March, 2022. To Christ be the glory, as always. Let's go over some market dollar volume internals. First, NASDAQ $201 billion volume as of hour 5 minutes after the close. NYSE $272 billion volume. OTC's $1.9 billion volume trading on the day on this sixth green day in a row on the S&P 500. Pretty insane to see. Pretty non-probable. Came in today with a heavy short bias. Wasn't going to trade it with any amount of size, but knowing that I could potentially look to do that same type of one MES contract, looking for a full intraday move to the downside to play it somewhere to the close. Take it from somewhere post 15 to 30 minutes after the open, and then trade it, watch it become a trend day, and then find it somewhere exiting closer to the close to look for a big move that way with nice risk reward. And I'll actually pull it up quick of two in and outs that I did take on the day. One, actually, this was pre-market of equities market time, but this was 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Actually getting short here at this kind of, call it a little triple top or lower high that I found here that that could have led into the inability for it to just continue to keep pushing price higher. So that may have been another perk or opportunity to get a short, establish a nice risk reward to then obviously risk that high of day, but then watch it fade to the downside there. I thought that was a nice opportunity, and sure enough, it did end up working pretty nicely for the next hour or even just before market open, but then we just skyrocketed as soon as volume started coming in and never even looked back. I tried again, another point here, as it was kind of doing a similar thing as rounded off from that initial morning perk out of the gate. Tried to fall off again, but could not break to the upside there, but still was just lingering. So that still hesitancy space, or still probable that it could go to the upside, all the while knowing that in full effect. So that's why I'm keeping it very small size of one MES contract, but playing to that potential downside of that type of trade that I'm seeing there. Covered accordingly. I forget the specific points on there, but maybe $20-$40 in total that I lost on both of those for the points I took against me on those little short trades of, I'll probably do the same thing tomorrow of a 7 green day in a row. It's certainly not impossible, right? But it's unlikely. And that's the type of probability trades that I'm going after. And then establishing and finding points along the way of promising risk reward to be able to sit in a position of power and not be so succumbed to the individual ticking action. And especially when I was doing that with the full size ES contracts, but finding a position of power and knowing the time frame at which I'm trading and not being so wrapped up and involved in the tick by tick printing there for that type of trade. So that was those little MES trades that I took there, and unfortunately that my 930 strategy just did not go off today for some reason. I think it may have been because I was short already from that one MES contract. I don't think that is, but sometimes in the back testing that I do, it skips for some reason, if there's just way too much volume, that the parameters that I set to find that entry point, which is immediately right at that first bar of 930, even just a few little ticks before, a few little milliseconds before, for some reason, some way, somehow, sometimes I think it slips through the cracks. I'm going to chalk this one up to that. Today was just one of those days, and it was unfortunate because it would have been another winner for that little 2 points that I look for out of the gate. That is a very consistent, repeatable opportunity there to take full size with some ES contracts on that repeatable trade. It just did not go. The orders just did not send with the strategy that I had. It was enabled. I don't think there was anything missing on my side or mistakes on my part of human error, but chalk it up to human error. Can't do anything about it. There's a fly. I'm going to get it. So that was frustrating, but I did come in nicely with the daily strategy that I go for at the direct open of the session for the previous day, that the session opens on the previous day, to get into today. So that was a nice opportunity. Of course, having to sit through pretty crazy unrealized P&L, and that's just what it's going to be. That's what this strategy is, especially on the loss days, on the losing days, which this very well could have been if it did turn into a red day. It could have been an account wiping loss, but I would have fully well known that is factored into the overall net profit P&L of this trade. And like I said earlier, of keeping my time perspective in mind. It's not just about the one singular trade with these automated, back-tested strategy ideas based on the S&P 500 and the futures idea that I use the modality of the futures to trade them with. Keeping that time perspective in mind on what the trade actually is. It's not just about one single day, just like every single trade. It's just that doesn't form me as a trader. One bad trade, one good trade, but is the collection. It's how I get back up when I'm knocked down, how I carry myself and continue to go about my business when the winters come as I expect them to. Just learning lessons all the way, and grateful for another day here in front of the computer screen. Best job in the world by far. Still loving it. Let's get into tickers now. PALI I'll start off with. Man, this was a nice first day one. Thought it was going to be a lot more promising, and I think Chris did, especially too. I didn't get the specifics from him, but I can assume that he was sizing in pretty heavily. A little similar to NRSN that happened yesterday with that crazy hundreds of % moves on that first day. Just for reference on this one, I have actually traded this one before, short to the downside for a morning dump setup. I'll get into that in a little bit, but it's American Biotech, around 10 to 14 million float, 14 million market cap, 10 million float. News catalyst today was FDA study may proceed letter that they received for bowel function after abdominal surgery. Sweet. They do not have a lot of cash left, and they got a few warrants out with a shelf and convertibles pending. And then I'll pull up quickly. I think it's still on my on-demand. July 29th. Yeah, this perfect chart. This was let's go back to the daily, actually. This day here in reference. This day. Yeah, this day right here on this candle. July 29th that I played to the downside for when that morning dump setup was churning out beautifully. When I was initially just starting it, of looking for any huge continuous perks that just happened and looking for that failure for price to maintain VWAP, establishing a short position from there and just letting it ride. Most of the times ending up letting it sit through market hours as well for even more fade, but beautiful price and specific chart for that morning dump setup in that market ecosystem. Did not want to try and trade that. Of course, I can't actually go short anymore with my margin account that I have right now, the setup that I have, but I would not have gone short anyway. Of just that I don't feel that pattern has been showing itself to be effective or happening in the past few recent trading weeks or months even. So definitely was going to let it ride, do what it wants to do, but look heavily for any dip and rip pattern around that 9:45, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later time frame. If any levels were starting to hold, to then establish a position. It did start to rise after that second minute of market open. And then start to sell off a little bit, came back down under VWAP, broke to a new low, but then rejecting off of VWAP, finding another base level, and then started in with 50 shares off of what I thought was just too quick of a little reclaim. I thought price was going to start picking up again, and it was going to be an evolved dip and rip pattern that was saying, hey, I don't want to take full size here. It's not where my most convicted, what I was coming into this chart planning for, but I think something potentially could happen here, but sure enough, it rejected off of VWAP to that price action, began to pull back to that original little low here of 128, and I recorded that screen. I'm glad I pulled that TV back out again to get the screen recordings for the level 2 time and sales and charts on those days. So I have this one on that Trader HQ page. As for reference, hard battle fought at 128, and I was very interested to watch it the whole time. It was just an awesome kind of fight and battle to see of who was going to win out. The bid was stepping up at certain times, and the ask was stepping up at certain times, and it would just continue to beat down, and then the bid would step back up again, and lines being drawn the whole way, and just very interesting to watch, and no real surefire direction that it was going to trend within these 2 minutes candles, in my opinion, and that's why I was sizing up more, taking another 100 shares. Originally came into this one, if it did offer kind of a beautiful, pristine, little sell-off, maybe a little trickle, get to 945, obvious consolidation, technical level to risk off of low a day or any of that consolidation to play to VWAP. I was willing to take 1,000 shares minimum on this type of trade to play for 10% profit or beyond as a minimum profit target on that, but just did not happen. So I'm sizing myself down accordingly and adjusting as the chart showed itself. And as that 128 was thinking it was going to hold, sizing it with more shares, but keeping in mind of watching at level 2 of if it could break at any point. Sure enough, it did start to print to 127. It was like a little hiccup, I think, of hit 127 and just didn't fully panic immediately. And then, my finger is hovering over that button saying, okay, is this a fake out or what's going to end up happening here? And sure enough, it starts to fall, but still was able to get 125 on the exit for 3% loss on that little dip and rip attempt, and tempted again at other points here, around this just before 10 o'clock time frame. Okay, maybe it bases here, not looking for any extraordinary crazy move beyond VWAP, but maybe we do reclaim to VWAP a little bit, still in the lingering hours of the morning session. But even that was just, like a 2-3 cent rise that you did get, but sure enough, it did fall off some more and just offered nothing the whole rest of the day. So I really don't have any idea what it's going to do the second day for how close to the previous trading day close that it closed today, based off of how much it was moving in the pre-market on that initial spike. So keep it in the watch. Second day offers more sell off or even harder move to the downside, or just not even like it's resting or consolidating. I really doubt that a third day is going to produce any type of surge or bagged shorts that would force a squeeze to happen to be a long trade on that third day. So we'll still keep it on watch, but keeping that in mind as well. I wanted to talk about MULN. Awesome little chart. I actually got, just like I mentioned in PALI, with my margin count now set up, I can't actually short, which is stupid, but I'm devoting my time to this futures little trading, so hopefully we can start to size that up more and then move some of that cash back over to the shorting account to get that going again. But overextended, gap down, call it a first red day continuation. I think the obvious position of power that you should be or could be sitting in would be from yesterday, just before. This would be 2 o'clock, around that time frame, sitting through this whole little gap down. Obviously, I would have been covering into these hard flushes here, but still having some lingering shares from this 3.7 average. Man, that's just a beautiful little sit to hold through overnight, to look into weakening price action in this pre-markets today. Having not having that position coming into today, I still think there was an opportunity even at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock to still be in and call that a reasonable entry, to look for more downside if any spikeage or little play still was left to occur within the morning session, to continue to look for that as a potential add-on as well, which was exactly the basis for this trade, since I can't get short or take any trade during pre-market with that TradingView paper trading setup. So just keeping myself accountable, because I am actually pushing buttons on that TradingView. But sometimes I used to do it mentally to say, okay, I'm like literally say it out loud, I'm getting short here, and keep myself accountable to that, draw the little arrow on the chart. But yeah, just for what it's worth now, just still getting in shorter, playing these as I can with TradingView and what that offers there. So finding a nice little perk back to VWAP went that 4th, 5th minute after the open, that it rises back above, finds a little top here, establish a short, however many shares I took, maybe 300 I think it was. Has that price action, which I like to see of it, failing on that, hovering just below VWAP, but eventually cracking, and then breaking to a new low of day after that. But incredibly sharp recovery after that, and pushes to new high of day intraday here off of that, which certainly spooked me out, and that became my stop. And wow, that you got me again. Like, how do these things know? And as it becomes obvious in hindsight, looking at these charts in reflection of, wow, there was obviously a lot of other people putting their stops there, and that's just where the chart needed to go in order to collect that food to fill its belly. So looking at the Millionaire Chat too, and learning from them, of understanding how they were approaching the chart and what positions they were sitting in, and how they were looking at this, of the Roy guys sitting in this full day through all of this continuing to hold and not break to new low of day after that initial push within, this was the 17th minute from market open, sitting through that and just waiting eventually until the obvious chart that, of course, I wasn't in front of my screen at the time, but this of, it's an overextended gap down play. Lots of shorts want to be in this super low floater. It's just continuing to hold and cling closer and closer to VWAP. And if it's not happening, eventually a non-bearish signal has to turn bullish, and vice versa, right? So that's eventually what we saw here. And funny enough to see that this 3-6 line is also right around this area where we saw that initial hard crack yesterday. And funny that it didn't push any higher than that. And for whatever reason, there's a lot of things that I don't think are coincidences in the stock market, and I think that was certainly one of them. That specific area or range just held very beautifully for how little amount of time it actually traded there, just barely tapped and then pulled back off. But that's where price action ended up squeezing to for all the lingering shorts that were still holding it, either starting in from pre-market market hours today, or still holding back, covering that tried to get in off of yesterday's price action there. Great chart to see and be a part of. Short sale restricted going into tomorrow. I think it could offer some sketchiness or craziness if some key levels start to be hit again. So certainly keeping it on watch to the long side and letting it prove itself if I would ever touch it. Of course, paper, but ever touch it to the short side again on MULN there. NRSN was the other one I took. I took this one real, actually, 10 shares. Very speculative. Second day plays are always just up in the air. It's trying to decipher who's where and why would somebody feel convicted to act on today before waiting for actual tests of specific key levels. Second days are usually those rest days, or just kind of figuring itself out, especially after the incredible first green day that it had yesterday. So I thought there was a little technical level holding here in pre off of 5.5. I didn't hold it perfectly in the after hours of yesterday, but kind of holding it decently in pre-market today, so thought it was basing there again. Took a little speculative long, not expecting much out of it. If we got to $6, or even if we got to VWAP again off of that, sweet, awesome little trade there, but definitely willing to take the risk. And sure enough, it happened pretty much right after my entry that it broke that level, that 5.5. So took the loss there at 5.31. Willing to do that time and time again, to just be in that process of identifying trades that not only I feel have decent probability, but offer very nice risk-reward setups to profit off of. So that was NRSN. Again, keeping that one on watch for tomorrow, along with MULN, to see what craziness you got in store for us. We'll be excited to see, because that is really all that had. Nothing more on the scanners that's piquing my interest as of right now, but keeping after it, keeping the grind active and alive, and loving it every single day. And I sincerely thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you guys on the next one.